Hello everyone. This demo is part art therapy as well as a grand creative experiment. I'm starting with an iridescent pearlized, actually it's an airbrush paint, so it's an acrylic base on a wooden cradled panel. And part of what I want to do today is really put the cold wax through its paces. I am a traditional oil painter who uses cold wax with my oils, and I paint in an expressionist representational style. But today this is art therapy. Here you'll see that I'm taking some strips of shantung silk and I'm just kind of ripping them apart and really getting into the visceral feel of it. And then, as you can see, I'm attaching it to my substrate, my underpainting. Just kind of letting it intuitively go where it needs to, and that's part of the therapeutic value of what I'm doing today. Just kind of ripping it in shreds and letting it fall in the general area, pasting it down with just a craft glue. And I'm taking my cold wax and my palette knife and just going over the area with cold wax to again adhere the silk to the wooden substrate, but also build up a background on which I can apply and embed different materials. And it just feels good to do something that is totally unconstructed and not referring to any type of photograph or still life presentation or plein air, being outside. It's nice to be in the studio and just kind of let loose on my creative spirit and just let it go, let my hand go where it wants to and not necessarily be thinking. Now these are palette scrapings from the previous piece of art that I finished. And so this is oil paint and some cold wax mixed in. And I scraped my palette. It wasn't completely dry. And I thought, well, let me apply this and see if it sticks well in the cold wax, which it is for the most part. And obviously you can see that there is a little bit of wetness to the oil. So as I'm dragging it around, it's actually coloring over the pearlized underpainting. And again, just adding more cold wax to it. And you can see the color coming out. You can see I actually see the colors that I used in my previous painting. And it feels good to just literally push the paint around and not have a preconceived notion of where this is going. Just covering the substrate, the wooden cradle, with color that I can layer and layer. And I'm going right over that silk that I pasted down on the substrate. It's fun working with the palette knife because you can create so many different textural effects with it. Here I'm kind of pulling up on that silk to make it actually come out of the cradle of the wooden panel in order to be in relief, somewhat of a third dimension starting. That is a sculpting tool that I'm working with, and I just want to scratch through and get back to that pearlized underpainting, and just, it feels good. It feels good to just scratch it up and push the paint and the cold wax around. This is a different tool that I'm working with, and then this is my silicone wedge brush that I enjoy working even my representational paintings. It is like a spatula, and it works very well with the cold wax and oil mixed. It goes on kind of like a pudding or gelato, depending on how much of a percentage you use with the cold wax. And that's really fun because you can derive many different effects from this, and just let it slide and work around on the panel. Again, more cold wax and oil combined using a palette knife. The great thing about the cold wax is that you can easily work a la prima, which is wet on wet, particularly when you're using a knife or a wedge brush. You can slide over the layer underneath very easily, and the effects are just this wonderful texture. The cold wax dries fairly quickly, so it's nice to work quickly, and if you really want to dig out from underneath and reveal the underpainting color, or if you want to constantly layer over, at a point it gets very tacky, and again, it's very easy to work over. Just fun letting it go where it wants to, blending colors, combining, hashing through a little bit, getting some of that background to show. What you can't see in this video is that the background that is the lightest has this iridescent quality, which when it catches the light is very reflective. It's very beautiful. These are pieces of hemp rope that I have. It's more like string. It's very fine, and I'm just letting them embed onto the cold wax as they want to, basically in a vertical order, but as they lap over, I'm just kind of letting them go where they fall. And just staying with that basic vertical. Now, the linoleum cutter. Yes, digging in. I really wanted to see what the effect was through the cold wax, digging into that wood and getting that wood underneath to show through. The linoleum cutter is a very sharp tool, and it's like a big wedge, and the effect is again, it's visceral feeling. It's creating these little curls that are coming out in relief on the substrate, and it's showing through the beautiful wood. Now coming back the next day, I've let it dry overnight, and I'm just coming back with oil and Gamsol, a very watery color, not very textural, just getting some line work in here with a thin bristle brush, and just getting some drama in here and seeing what happens. In my mind, it's starting to look like an abstract landscape, but we'll see where it goes. Maybe some bushes or low-lying trees that are in standing water. But the therapeutic value, again, it feels good to just do something that's unconstructed. Going over with a watercolor brush with just some Gamsol, blending certain areas, softening. And the texture is building up most definitely on this, especially with the curls of wood that are coming out from the background. And again, I'm staying with a very almost translucent paint, blending slightly, nothing too heavy, just everything very subtle. Just having fun with this, seeing where it goes. Ah, one of my favorite colors. Love those salmon peaches. I love incorporating them into the sky, into rocks. But this feels good just drizzling them on the canvas. Blending, blending. What I find interesting about this abstraction is that to everybody there's a different interpretation, and even an individual observing it many different times can derive different areas of interest and different interpretations. Is it a landscape? Is it a seascape? Is it just, feeling an emotion? Um, Sometimes I will do abstract work like this between what I call major paintings, major representational expressionist paintings. And this feels good because it offers me as an artist a fresh perspective and kind of breaks the concentration and allows me to refocus. So the experiment so far is dealing with attaching silk to my substrate, attaching old paint scrapings, attaching string. So far so good. Everything is adhering, staying put, moving slightly as I'm working it, but basically staying put. So I'm happy with that. And I really want to see what this cold wax can do in a mixed media situation. more blending, more adding some drama, some darker tones, but altogether the appearance is soft. And I'm just working with colors that I enjoy looking at. That's the art therapy part. Just trying to get a little more definition. To me, they are starting to look like trees or scrub trees that are in a large area of standing water. Maybe not too deep a water, but maybe at the edge of a lake. Maybe that's reflection I see. Maybe that's just the depth of the water. So I'm kind of making up a story in my head as I go. And now, with the oil paint done and the cold wax, I'm going to once again take the cold wax and see what else I can embed into the substrate. And I've got some glass beads that I found, and I'm mixing up the glass beads. And I'm just gonna brush them lightly here and there with my palette knife and see where this goes. See if it will stay embedded, see when it dries. Does it dry and are the beads shiny, or will they dull down with the cold wax? So again, a great creative experiment that feels very loose and unconstructed, has a good feeling to it. I just want to see what happens with this. And it's very therapeutic. There we go. It's easier to pull it up with the palette knife right out of the bead container. That's some pink bead, just here and there. As I was attaching this, I'm thinking that it reminds me of berries on a tree or a bush. I've got some blue, adding that up top. And last but not least, an agate. Where am I going to put that? That's a good spot. And I'll see when this dries how well it adheres, if it stands up to the cold wax. There you have it. Hope you enjoyed watching.